We want to say thank you for listening, so our sponsors have given some great deals in this episode. Check these out. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Axness, because when lives are at stake and conditions are challenging, clear communication is of the utmost importance. And SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. Breeze Eastern, they dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. The Axness PNG wireless ICS system can bring cutting-edge wireless intercommunication system technology to any aircraft. The PNG system can be fully integrated into an existing ICS system or can be carried on and off as a mobile base station. They can go anywhere at any time on any aircraft. Plus, with the strongest and most robust waterproofed handheld on the market, this system can take a hit and keep working. Their wireless intercom systems are designed to enhance situational awareness through improved communication capability. This system brings superior noise canceling technology to eliminate rotor wash and engine noise from your ICS. The Axness PNG wireless system is currently deployed in more than 1,800 public safety, air ambulance, and search and rescue aircrafts worldwide. I have personally used the Axness system in 4 different countries and on 5 different airframes. It is awesome. If you want more information, contact them today at axness.com. That's AXNES.com. You just make sure you tell them Quinn sent me. And SR3 Rescue Concepts is a training company that can help with your helicopter training, a standardization and safety check, or maybe just an audit or an FAA refresher. They are here to bring your agency up to date with the most current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. The training staff is awesome. With a certified flight instructor pilots, experienced crew members, which I am happy to say that I am one of them, they offer training in rescue, medical, tactical, firefighting, ground operations, and night vision goggle use. SR3 is also partnered with Petzl to assist with personal protective equipment and the highly specific Lazard. SR3 also goes beyond the helicopter world as they provide high-angle rescue training and tactical medicine training. Contact them today at sr3rescueconcepts.com or over on Instagram at sr3_rescue.
Up next, we get to hear from the host of our podcast, and I'm the one that gets to interview him. When we were outlining what we were going to talk about in this episode, we discovered that this particular case was such a big one that we didn't have time to talk about the others that we thought we would include in the episode. For 99 episodes, we've listened to extremely humble men and women share their stories. We've heard multiple people tell wild rescue stories and then say, "It was just another day on the job. I did what I was trained to do." We've heard many people say, "My awards are in the bin in the basement." I often wonder what the interview would be like if the spouse or a family member was being interviewed alongside those telling their story. In this episode, that is what we get. Me as the spouse sitting alongside my husband as he tells about his case on the Galaxy. As we were in the garage going through his Coast Guard bin, Jason was handing me pictures, magazines, awards, and articles to look at. Some I've seen, and most I hadn't. As someone who's not in a rescue role, I'm fascinated and impressed by many of the items that are stored in the bins in our garage. For example, one of the items that Jason handed to me was a letter that he received from President George W. Bush. Because that's common. The crew in this case earned the Association of Naval Aviation Outstanding Achievement Award and the Naval Helicopter Association Air Crew of the Year Award. I've heard my husband many times throughout the years say that he had an amazing crew, and it was all of them working together that saved the lives of so many that day. This case happened in Kodiak, Alaska. Jason received letters of recognition from the governor of Alaska, the Alaska legislature, as well as a letter from a senator in our home state of Massachusetts. And as I just said, President Bush as well. Letters were coming in for my amazingly humble husband. Jason earned the USO's Coast Guardsman of the Year Award. The USO chooses only one person per year from each branch of service, and Jason was chosen in 2003. I have a 78-year-old great uncle who tells everyone that Jason is a lifeguard. It's kind of a joke at this point in our family because my uncle truly just doesn't understand the difference between a lifeguard and a rescue swimmer. But after I read these awards and saw Jason in Coast Guard Magazine, Soundings Magazine, and Reader's Digest, and I've seen him on the History Channel's Alaska's Dangerous Territory, I think it's safe to say that there is a massive difference between a lifeguard and a rescue swimmer. Enjoy our episode. It's a great one. I might be biased, but it's amazing. With United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 500, Mr. Jason Quinn.
My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast.
Welcome to the Real ResQ podcast. Most of you know me as Quinny's wife or Mrs. Quinn, but my name is Melissa Quinn, and I am wife of rescue swimmer number 500, Jason Quinn. And I have the privilege today of being your host for episode number 100, where my husband, Jason Quinn, is going to talk about the big rescue that earned him the Distinguished Flying Cross. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks, babe. That's funny. You know what? I appreciate you doing this with me. I really do. There have been some people that have asked about like, oh, hey, how come you don't talk about some of your stories? And this was my biggest case that I've had to date. And I'm okay with that because it was a pretty gnarly case. And I'm excited to share it.
For the record, your listeners have had to wait 100 episodes where I had to wait 5, 6, 7 years to hear this story, probably even longer. And today I'm probably going to hear things for the first time as well.
That is a very good possibility. So first, I apologize, honey. My bad.
It's okay. I understand. Usually at this point in the episodes, we ask the guest to tell a little bit about him or herself, but we know a lot about you. So I'm going to dive right in and read your award.
Cool.
And as I was looking over your award, one of the things I asked was, are they always this long? And you said, not usually. So this is a pretty long one, but I'll do my best to impress you. All right. Citation to accompany the award of the Distinguished Flying Cross to Jason P. Quinn, Aviation Survival Technician, 3rd Class, United States Coast Guard. Petty Officer Quinn is cited for extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight as the rescue swimmer aboard Coast Guard HH-60 Helicopter 6021 on 20 October 2002. The crew from Cold Bay, Alaska, responded to the distress call from an explosion on board the 180-foot fishing vessel Galaxy, with 26 people on board, located 35 miles south of St. Paul Island. Arriving on scene, the crew discovered people still aboard the blazing ship. With winds over 25 knots pushing 20-foot seas, compounded by flames and dense smoke from the burning vessel that was rolling 30 degrees to each side, the air crew was unable to safely hoist directly from the vessel. With selfless regard for his personal safety, Petty Officer Quinn volunteered to enter the water in an area full of debris, fuel, and flames shooting out of the burning hull to recover the mariners. To position himself for the recoveries, he swam to within 10 feet of the massive screws that were pitching completely out of the water and slamming back into the sea. Directing the first survivor to jump in the water, he was in position to quickly place him in the rescue basket. With the first survivor recovered, Petty Officer Quinn was hoisted and redeployed to the swiftly drifting Galaxy. Back in position again, precariously close to the screws and in the debris field, he directed the second mariner into the water. Within moments, he had the survivor in the basket and on his way up to the helicopter. While readying the third survivor for hoisting, a massive wave submerged both of them underwater, allowing the steel hoist cable to wrap around the survivor. Petty Officer Quinn quickly unhooked the basket from the hoist hook, preventing severe injury to the survivor, and quickly regained control of the situation. Once the 3 survivors from the stern were recovered, Helicopter 6021 moved to the bow to recover the other 2 survivors. Again, at great personal risk and nearing exhaustion, he entered the water near the bow, this time facing the gigantic anchor rising out of the water with the swells. Using all of his remaining strength to stay away from the heaving bow, he successfully recovered the last 2 survivors. Petty Officer Quinn's actions, aeronautical skill, and valor were instrumental in saving the lives of 5 mariners. His courage, judgment, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh, yeah. And as I'm reading that, I'm so thankful it's nothing that I was had to watch live.
Yeah, it was an interesting day.
Well
for sure.
done.
Thank you, love. Thank you. I got to give credit, mad credit right now, to my entire crew that was on board. My pilot command, Melissa Rivera, co-pilot Kendall Guerin, and my hoist operator, Mike Simone. We actually deployed after that as well, and we had flown together on and off. I mean, at that point, I had been Kodiak for a little while, a couple of years, and we had flown like a lot of training flights together. You know, either together as a full group, or we had gone to separately. Like I had flown with Melissa at one point, then I flew with Kendall at one point, then I flew with Mike at one point. Mike and I were good friends on the hangar deck. Like just hanging out. So I mean, I had an amazing crew, like really good crew. And I'm going to give Will Milam a hard time right now because I had 2 women pilots and then Mike and I, and Will, because I was on deployment with Will at the time in Coal Bay, which I'll get into that in a sec. But he was like, before we're getting ready to leave, he went up to, I don't know if it was one of the officers or what it was, but he was like, yeah, we heard it was an all-women's crew, and the only person we could pick was Quinny. And I was like, you're a dick.
That sounds like Will.
It totally does, right? Freaking Will. Love the guy. But, it's funny to think, and again, thank you, babe, for doing this with me. This is episode 100. And at the same time, that case we're just about 20 years. Like this October 20th will be 20 years that case happened. That's a long time ago, and I vividly remember that day and what everything went down. So I'm looking forward to kind of recapping and reliving, and then I'm going to debrief a little bit of as well with this. So if anybody else has something similar to that case. You know, they can take what I went through and what I've learned to the next time. So,
all right.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's dive into it. All right, here we go. October. So a couple things about this case in particular. So the Coast Guard up in Kodiak, Alaska, because that's where we're based out of, we actually deploy, depending on the crab season, out in either Cold Bay, which is out on the panhandle of going out to Alaska, or St. Paul Island. This in particular one is in Cold Bay. And we'd go 24 hours on, 24 hours off. And it just so happened this case was a very interesting time frame. And I was off going at the time. So during the day, and I can't remember exactly what time we changed over. I want to say it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the evening at dinner time. It was something like that. But we had gone on a day flight and we flew for like 5 hours. And we went out and we're flying over. It wasn't a terrible day outside. The seas were kind of big. It was a little windy. You know, you're looking at probably 15-foot seas. You know, and the crab fishing boats are doing their thing. They're all crabbing and they're balls to the wall. But you know, again, we would go out, we'd fly over, see people, wave at them as we're flying over. Just, hey, reminder, we are here. We're close by. You know, if anything happens, we're already in the air. So we had a trainer flight every day. So, and then on the way back, you know, we do a little searching on the beach for like glass balls and other antlers and stuff that might be on the beach. So we're just, you know, it helps hone your skills as you're searching for little small things on the beach. But we did, like I said, it was probably close to 4 to 5 hour flight. Let's go 4. Like it's 4 hour flight. I mean, we did a bag of gas. So take off, cruise out. When we got back, we had our daily maintenance to the aircraft. So when we pulled the aircraft into the hangar, both crews for swimmers, mechanics, you know, the watch captains, everybody's there, is working on the aircraft. And we're doing the standard inspection. I mean, we're deployed for 2 weeks, so you got to get your stuff done. The pilots had gone down to the house to do their pilot thing, whether, you know, their debriefing, their changeover to the aircraft, any issues, what we saw, you know, they have all their plans and stuff. And we're, again, doing maintenance on the aircraft. We had panels that were removed from underneath because we were working on stuff, doing inspections. Will and I were working on whatever survival gear that we had for our inspection stuff. And I remember this very distinctly, like the door to the hangar flung open and bam! And Melissa had walked in. She's like, we need the helicopter put back together. We just got a case. The off-going crew is going to take it, so we don't put time on the oncoming crew. So that was me and my crew. Will and his crew, they were standing by. So we were kind of expecting this to be like, you know, not a big deal. And that we would fly out, turn around, and come back. But they figured if we ended up flying an hour out and flying an hour back, that's 2 hours off the oncoming crew. So why not take the off-going crew? I was like, right on, let's do this.
I was going to say, I'm sure you were all about it.
Oh, I was totally all about it. It was, yeah, I was excited. And I looked at Will, and Will's like, dude, have fun. So here's what the report that came in was: we had a fire on a vessel. That's really all we had. And they were about 2 hours away. So we were doing like math, like 2 hours away, man, they'll have that thing put out before we even get halfway there. It's probably a galley fire.
Was that common?
I won't say common, but we've, you know, you hear it not even quite a bit. I don't want to say quite a bit. You hear it over the radio. You hear a SAR call come in that there's a fire on board. And you're like,
so hearing that wasn't completely new.
No.
Okay.
Good call. Good question. Yeah, no, it was not. It was like you would hear that from time to time. Like, oh, there's a fire on board. And then the crew get it under control and then you're done. Then they deal with it when they come back into port. So we launch out, and one of the first things that I remember is as we took off, we always got communications with Kodiak Land Station, or the Air Station Kodiak Communication Center. So I'm like, Coast Guard Air Station, this is 6021. We're en route. I need an updated lat long on the position of the Mayday call. Break, waiting. 5 minutes goes by. I don't hear anything. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. They at least would respond. Air Station Kodiak, 6021. Looking for an updated position and what's going on with the vessel. Over. Nothing. It went like that for 20 minutes. I'm like, this is not good. So I let the pilots know. I'm like, hey, we're 20 minutes into our flight. They know we took off, but I don't have any communications. Mm-hmm. So they're flipping through some radios up front, and they're like, okay, try it now. Oh, Air Station Kodiak, 6021. We're en route. Can I get an updated position? Air Station Kodiak, or 6021, this is Air Station Kodiak. Roger, updated position is this. There are 26 people in the water. Ooh. And I was like, I just got chills just thinking about that. I remember hearing that number, 26 people in the water. And I was like, I actually came back. I was like, Air Station Kodiak 6021, did you say 26 people in the water? Is that confirmed? Roger, 6021, confirmed, 26 people in the water. I'm like, Roger, let me call you right back, over. And I got on the ICS and I'm like, hey guys, we get 26 people in the water. They're abandoning ship or abandoned ship. And there was a little bit of silence in the aircraft. And then we started having the discussion. Now we're an hour and a half from being on scene. So there was a lot of things that were going through the idea. Okay, what do we have in the aircraft that we need to get rid of? So in the back of the H-60 helicopter of the Coast Guard, we carry the rescue basket, a Stokes litter, a dewatering pump, and then there's stuff on the starboard, and then there's troop seats and all this stuff that we can fold up and move. But we're thinking about how to maximize space in the back of the aircraft. Mm-hmm. And we're talking like, all right, when we get on scene, if there are this many people, we'll just chuck stuff out of the aircraft to make as much room as we can. We don't know how many Good Samaritan vessels have heard the Mayday if people are on their way. So one of the greatest things about Alaska is you have a lot of vessels that are in the area that respond mm-hmm. to this incident. Like they want to help. They're all brothers out there in the fishing community. It's amazing to see. So we had this full discussion in the aircraft. Like, okay, here's our plan. Should we need more room? So I was like, holy cow. Question.
I do have a question, and I apologize for those that will think this is a silly question. You're calling Air Station Kodiak.
Yes.
Who's calling them? How do they know 26 people are in the water?
Good question. Look at this girl. Come on. So they have a radio on board, and it's going through a repeater system out in the ocean. Actually,
so somebody on the vessel was
calling Mayday. Yeah. And had mentioned, we are abandoning ship.
Yeah.
We have there are 26 people on board. We are abandoning ship, because at that point the radio started to fry out due to the fire. Now we don't know this at this point. We just know the last communication was, this is our updated position. Yeah. We are abandoning ship. There are 26 people abandoning a ship. Now that goes from the ship to St. Paul Island, which is our Loran station, and then the repeaters go all the way back to Kodiak, and it's all, radio transmissions. So that's how that comes through. And if that's a little inaccurate out there, guys, I apologize. But I know to answer that question, they're radioing from the boat, and that's how they get. So now we're about 45 minutes away, give or take. We've had this full discussion about what we're going to do on scene, and now it's just kind of a waiting game. I mean, we got the pedal to the metal. We're flying as fast as legally possible in the 860. Like they're pulling full power, and we're rolling. Winds are starting to pick up a little bit. I'm looking outside. There's 15-foot waves. I'm like, okay, cool. It's also 5 p.m. Mm-hmm. So it's starting to get dark. And I was like, all right, cool. And there are things that are going through my head of like, it hadn't even dawned on me that, by the way, I'm going into the water to get 26 people. It's just, we have to pick up 26 people. Like, where are we going to put them? So we start to get closer. We start to hear vessels that are on scene. There are 3 Good Samaritan vessels. I apologize, I don't remember the name of them, but we know that they're on scene because they're like, it's fully engulfed in flames, and we are on scene searching for people. And I was like, holy cow.
So and can you hear these people now?
Yeah, because now it's all on channel 16, which is an emergency channel,
Okay.
and we're listening to 16. So as you start hearing all this stuff, you're like, holy cow. And I remember getting to a point where we started to see what was really going on. And for whatever reason, I remember Melissa and Kendall kind of been like, wow, there it is. Like a kind of an aha moment, like, oh. But for them, they were so professional with how they portrayed it over the ICS. They're like, all right, boys, we've got it in sight, and it was like,
you can't see it yet.
Not at the moment. It was like, okay, we're close to being on scene where we have visual contact of the ship. But what we actually saw as we got closer, because Mike and I we crawled up to the front of the aircraft so we can look out the front of the aircraft. All you see is like this black smoke rolling across the ocean. And the smoke was sea level. It wasn't going up because the winds were just taking it. And it was just this black, thick smoke running across the ocean. And you're like, holy shit. We start to get closer on scene, and we start briefing about what we're going to do. And we want to fly over the vessel to see what's going on and if anybody's on it. And then as we fly by it, we're doing wind calculations. We're listening to all the ships on scene.
Who's doing the wind calculations?
It's all aircraft stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, aircraft, doing
Again, I apologize for...
You're good. I appreciate that. So as we come over the top, and we actually come on to 16, and we've said, all right, Coast Guard's on scene. Coast Guard's going to take over the call. We fly over the ship, and I look down, cabin doors open at this point, and we see 3 guys standing on the stern of the ship and 3 guys standing on the bow of the ship. And I know the award says 5. I'll get into that in a sec. Mike and I wave to let them know that we see them on the ship, and we fly over to the raft because we see the raft with a bunch of people in it. They're all waving, and I'm kind of little spoiler alert. I learned later we actually flew over 2 people in the water and never saw them. They were picked up later from a Good Samaritan vessel, but from what I understand, I believe they were in the water for almost an hour. Survival suits. They were in survival suits, thank God. But basically when we got so fixated on the ship on fire, and when I tell you a ship is on fire, it was engulfed in flames from stern to bow, bow to stern, left to right, port to starboard. The whole thing was in flames, and flames were coming out of the windows. It was coming out of the deck. It was flames everywhere. It was ridiculous. So we flew over the raft. Melissa and Kendall radioed down to the Good Samaritan vessels, and they said, we want you guys to go pick everybody up on the raft. Just take care of them. So we're going to go take care of the people on the ship. So now we know 20 people are in the water, but we know 6 people are standing on a frying pan right now, and we have to get them off. So as we pull into a hover over the stern. And I remember specifically looking at them because none of the 3 guys that were standing on the stern had a survival suit on. There was a dude in sweatpants and sweatshirt. And what I remember about that specifically is if they go into the water's 33 degrees. It was just above
the Bering
freezing.
Sea.
Yeah. Again, for all my my metric friends, it's like 1. The water temperature was cold, 1 degree. And it was like, okay, let's get into our rescue checklist, nose into the wind, and Mike start sending the basket down. We're going to start trying to put it on the vessel. Now the vessel was going, so the port and starboard side of the vessel, left and right, was parallel to the waves. So the boat was tipping left and right with the waves. It was, and again, we're in 15 to 20 foot waves right now, closer to 20, because I remember leaving and they were bigger than 20 feet when we left scene. So the boat is pitching and rolling, pitching and rolling. Mike's trying to get the basket on deck, pitching and rolling. There's a cable that's connected from a tower or a mast down to the back. So we're trying not to get the basket caught up in the cable, and we're trying to get in there, trying to catch it. And you've got Melissa flying right seat, and flip that. Kendall's flying left seat, Melissa's flying right seat, and Kendall's trying to do the hoist in the left seat based on where the winds were going. And we were coming over the ship, and it was at one moment in time that we had come over the ship. I'm looking underneath, watching Mike hoist, and it was like an explosion, and a Roman candle came out of the floor of the ship, the roof of the ship, the top part, exactly where we were flying over. And I can't tell you how big that flame was, but I remember seeing the boom, the flame come out, and yelling, abort, 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 brake right, brake right, brake right. And that's, you felt the aircraft tip to the right and move to the right. And I specifically remember Melissa and Kendall being like, whoa. And, it says I volunteered to go in the water. I specifically remember seeing or listening to Melissa say, Quinn, get your gear on, you're going in the water. I believe it was more of a direct order.
I think whoever wrote this knew your personality, and probably, if they didn't know the full story, guessed that you would have volunteered. I'm in. I would assume you. Yeah, that too. But the biggest thing about that part of it is we did not want to get close enough to the ship because we didn't want the ship we didn't want an explosion to happen and take us out of the air as well, because there goes a rescue asset and us. Right.
So we wanted to maintain a safe distance from the aircraft, but at least get close enough where we can get them. So now the brief turned into, Jason's going to go into the water. When I get into the water, we're going to ask them to jump to me. You have to understand that this ship is not only 180 feet, it's also 50 feet off the water. At least 50 feet, because there's 4 to 5 stories that are outside of the water that they're standing on top of. Wow. And every floor underneath them is on fire. Everything. So I said in our brief, I said, okay, as I'm going down, Mike, just stop halfway so I can have an opportunity to yell at them to jump to me. Yeah, okay, no problem. This is good. We got a good brief. We're going to get into it. I start to go down. I get about halfway, and I'm yelling at them, jump to me. Just jump one at a time, as loud as I possibly can.
Could they hear you?
I hope so. Yes.
You've got the helicopter. You've got the boat on fire. I'm sure it wasn't quiet.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't answer that.
They
jumped one at a time.
Oh, okay.
So, one of the other things I remember is that when I got down to the water, obviously the helicopter's at a certain distance away from the ship, and I disconnected. I'm okay, and I start taking off after the ship. So I'm swimming as hard as I can to the ship. Once I get to the ship, I'm looking at them saying, one guy jump. And, the award talks about the screws that were coming out of the water. So the screws were not turning. So let me emphasize that. The prop was stopped. Like there was nothing was moving. But every wave that it would take, like a catty corner, you would see the whole underneath part of the ship come out of the water and then, boom, slam back down into the trough of the next size as the wave went under. And I remember looking at that like, do not get sucked under. Do not get sucked under. Do not get sucked under, because I'm battling like getting sucked under and having to swim out. And that's one of the things that I remember very vividly. The other thing I remember very vividly about this case is I remember seeing the fire in all of the windows, like as you're looking at, and the paint on the outside of the ship would start to shrivel up, ignite, and then fall into the water and go out. And I was like, that's a hot fire. Mm-hmm. So guy number 1 jumps to me. He's got a buoy tied around his waist, and like I told you, he's in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. I swim up to him. As soon as he hit the water, again, the water's cold. He takes that deep breath of like, holy cow, it's cold water. I hit him, rotate, and I'm swimming away from the boat as fast as I possibly can because I don't want us to get sucked in. And side note, I didn't know this at the time, but I was debriefed later by Melissa and Kendall. They were actually yelling at me in the aircraft. They're like, Jason, don't get that close. Not that close. Not that close. And obviously I can't hear them. I'm not on ICS. But they were legitimately concerned that I was getting too close to the ship. So anyway, I swim around.
So they're watching this in live action.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Obviously,
right there. Yeah.
But
yeah,
I could see how that would be terrifying.
Totally. Yeah. I got to give mad props to Mike Simone right now because as soon as I had the victim and I turned around and started swimming, he was already sending the basket down. I look up when I signaled ready for pickup. Boom, the basket was halfway and then hit the water. And I dropped that guy in, signaled ready for pickup. That guy came out of the water. I kid you not, he was probably in the water for all of like 3 minutes. And I was like, yeah, that was solid. Right? So now one of the things that they teach us as a rescue swimmer is keep your eye on the basket as it's going up. Once it gets to the helicopter, then you can move your eyes back to where you're going to go. And that's in case something were to happen, the victim were to fall out, then I can go get him. If you don't know, all bad. So I watch the basket get to the helicopter. I turn around, and that ship is 150 meters away from me. Ugh. Like, it is far. I was like, I got this. Yeah, I can swim 100, no problem. Boom, I take off. Do. I look up. I haven't gained anything. Okay, one more time. Do. Swim. I look up. I'm like, I'm not gaining on this. And I've got 5 more people to go. Let me back up for a second. I almost forgot this. While we were doing our pattern, one of the guys on the bow of the ship jumped off. And we were like, we watched him jump off the ship. He had a survival suit on and stuff, but he jumped off. We were like, we got to get the guy in the water. And then one of the boats said, we have the guy in the water. We'll get him as soon as he's swimming away. I was like, roger that, cool. So we actually didn't have to worry about him. So we had 5 people on the ship now. So, gosh, I almost forgot about that. Silly guy. It was probably the smartest thing he could have done. Anyway.
Well, not to ask another ridiculous question, but if the boats were close enough to pick these guys up, why didn't they all jump off? I know you said one only had sweatpants on.
That was why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was only 2 guys that had survival suits on the ship. And the one guy jumped off. So I left one more guy with the survival suit. The other guys were just in regular street clothes or, sweatpants. They had gotten to the top of the ship, but they couldn't get to the survival suits.
Right.
And they, there was question about, So, good question. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Because that's what we're there for? I don't know. Yeah. Get him out. Yeah. Get him out of the water.
I assumed that's why they didn't have their survival gear on.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get to it.
True. Yeah. But.
So anyway, now it's 150 feet away from you.
Yards.
Oh.
Yeah, yards. 150 yards. Yeah, it was a ways. Not like super far, but far enough
That's
where you're like.
That's pretty far.
Yeah.
So what'd you do?
So what I did, I actually turned around to the helicopter. I gave an emergency pickup signal, and they sent the hook down. And what I was trying to do, all I wanted was the helicopter's help to get me next to the ship again, so that we could basically leapfrog it. Well, when I got picked up, I gave a level off signal about halfway up, and I just pointed at the ship. And Mike he wasn't connecting what I was trying to do. So he brought me all the way up. He's like, dude, what are you trying to do? What do you want? I was like, I can't catch the ship. Like, it's going to take me everything. I'm going to burn out by the time I get to the ship. Just take me over there, put me in, and I'll get him. He's like, got it. So he drops me in. Next guy comes. I think the award says the 3rd guy we got rolled by the wave. I'm going to go with that because that part I don't totally remember.
It was the 3rd.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So then the 2nd guy was no problem. And I remember this specifically where he hit the water. I grabbed him. I turned around. And when I turned around, the basket was already in the water for me. I'm like, Mike is the man. So I dropped him into the basket, ready for pickup. Basket goes into the cabin. Hoist stick is coming down. I connect. They send me over to the guy number 3. I'm like, we're in sync now. We're on a jive. We've got this down. We've figured it out. I get in the water. Guy number 3 jumps to me. As soon as he jumps to me, I grab him. I turn around. Basket's right there. I drop him in the basket. And when that happened, we got a little bit rolled, and I took a little bit of a breaker over our head, and it kind of rolled us. And I say kind of rolled us because I remember holding the basket, taking the breaker from behind us, and this guy and me and the basket getting submerged underwater. When that happened, we twisted 180 degrees. Well, when we twisted 180 degrees, the guy that was in the basket at the time, he tried to get out to get air. Well, when he did that, the cable came like from where the connection point is at the top of the basket. It went underneath the bales, around his waist, back through the bales, and up to the helicopter. And I remember staring at this thing like, oh my God, if the helicopter jerks, or if we get another wave, or it drops out from underneath us, this guy's going to get cut in half in front of me.
Oh.
I was like, that's not good. So I disconnect the cable from the basket. So the hoist stick is now disconnected. I unroute it from around him. I have it from my right hand to my left hand. I go to reconnect to the basket, and poof, the cable gets sucked right out of my hands. Doosh. Again, we caught a wave, whatever it was. Helicopter moved. Next thing I know, now I'm sitting in the water with this guy.
In a basket.
No hoist hook. Boat's on fire behind me. And I was like, holy shit. And I remember looking at him, and I'm like, it's going to be okay, guy. I'm going to get you out of here. And he looked at me like, calm and cool. He's like, I know. And I'm thinking like, we're so fucked right now.
Because why would it be easy?
Right.
That's why you train the way you train.
Oh, yeah. No kidding. But I remember the Mike trying to get me the hoist hook. It was a pain in the neck. Once he finally got it to me, I connected, and that guy, he was going up. And I remember feeling so relieved. And at that point, I'm like, I need to take a break. And I remember sitting back in the water and just chilling and kind of regaining myself, because I knew there were 2 more people that I still needed to get.
How do you sit back in the water and just chill?
I don't know. It was like doing like a backstroke. I'm just gonna do a leisure backstroke. I was just chilling. I was relaxing. I was trying to.
For the average person, treading water is exhausting. For you, it's a break.
That it was.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say I was enjoying the moment, but it was just to collect myself, because after looking at that guy's face when he looked at me, and I said, hey, we're gonna be okay. I'm gonna get you out of here, and he looked at me and was like, yeah, I know.
The adrenaline.
Scared to death. I was so scared. Like it was like, that's never happened to me in training before. Like this is a little new thing for me at that moment in time. I mean, heck, I'm 20 something years old. Yeah. 24 years old. 24 years old doing this. And yeah, anyway, okay. So now we got 2 more people to get. Like it's still game on. They still got to go. So I get back up to the aircraft. Now we're going to move to the bow of the ship, because that's where the other 2 guys are. Same game plan. I go into the water.
Did he pick you back up to move you?
Yeah, the helicopter. Yeah. So then I get picked back up. We go back over. Now I'm in the front of the ship, or the bow of the ship. I get put in the water, and we have such a system. We know what's going on. We know what we're going to do. I get into the water. I swim up, and now instead of looking at the screws, I'm looking at this anchor that is 5 times bigger than me. Humongous. And I'm watching it slam into the waves. And I was like, oh my good Lord. Okay, don't get under the anchor. The anchor will crush you. That's not a good spot to be. But at that point, the first guy jumped at me, and I hit him. I turned around, and I remember swimming kind of up the wave. Basket gets dropped in. I put him in the basket, ready for pickup, and I'm thinking, I have one more guy to go. Mike's got this, and I just turn around and sprint after the ship. So it's like that last round. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I've got one more to go. Mike's on point. I'm not going to worry about this guy falling out. I'm going to go after the ship. I take off after the ship, and I was like, go, jump. This guy, his name is Captain Shoemaker.
I was going to say, it's the captain.
And he is the last one to leave the ship. And I remember him hitting the water. He was in a survival suit. I wrapped him up, and I remember a big howl. Ah! And what I didn't know at the time is, again, we're taught in swimmer school to control our victims as soon as we get them. So I went in and did a big grab, big chest, cross chest control carry. Bam, got him hard. He had like 4 broken ribs. Oh. So I just squeezed a bunch of broken ribs. He had burns all over his body. His hands were burned. And again, I don't know that at the time, but I remember.
You're also dealing with 20-foot waves.
Yes.
So you need to hold on to him quite tight, I would assume.
Yes. Yeah, you think? Get away from the ship.
So you know what? The ribs will heal. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Swimming up wave, down a wave. Swimming up a wave, swimming down a wave. Actually, it's more like swimming. You're staying in one spot as you swim kind of up the wave, and then you're trying to swim as hard as you can back on the back side of the wave. And I remember that actually with Shoemaker, because when I grabbed him, we're swimming up the wave, and I remember the ship not moving away from the ship, and I'm like, come on, because my legs at this point I'm tired and I can feel it, and I'm like, come on, just get up, and I get to the top of the wave, and then it was like, I'm cruising down the backside, and you see that ship on the next wave just get that much farther in front of you or away from you, and I was like, okay, I can relax a little bit. Let me get to the basket, get Captain Shoemaker in the basket, ready for pickup, and now everybody's off the ship. I'm going to relax for a minute again. Let me take a breath, relax. Hoist hook comes down. I connect, go right back up to the helicopter. I sit down. I look at Mike. I was like, who's next? I remember him saying to me, we don't know yet. We don't know. We're asking. We're looking. And I wasn't treating anybody yet. I remember seeing the guys, the 5 guys that were in the aircraft, and yeah, it was okay. It was okay. Like I got pulled into the aircraft, and I remember looking at everybody. And I was like, is anybody injured? And Captain Shoemaker's like, my hands are burned. So I reached into the pack and I grabbed we had some burn gauze stuff that you could put all over, and so I was like, here, let me see your burns. I cut off his gloves on his suit, and then I put some burn stuff on him, and then Mike is like, hey, we've got to get somebody. They're doing CPR on somebody down on deck. And I was like, okay.
On the ship?
On one of the ships.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So on one of the Good Samaritan ships that it picked up, they're doing CPR on one of the guys. And I was like, okay, cool. The plan was just to hoist down the basket. They were going to load the victim into the basket. We were going to get him in the aircraft, and then we were just going to take him to St. Paul Island. That's where we were going. We attached a couple tag lines together, or the trail lines, as the Coast Guard calls them. Trail line goes down, gets on deck, basket goes in. Well, those guys, as they were doing CPR, part of it is they said, oh, we got a pulse back. And so we felt that we had to take him. Everybody else that they had picked up seemed to be okay, except for him. We get him up into the aircraft. And I remember it being very interesting because the guys on the ship had literally tied him up in the basket. And when I say that, it was they didn't want him to fall out. So they tied rope over the top of the basket. So when we got up, we kind of looked at it kind of funny. It was like, well, that's weird. And I remember having to get my knife out, cut the rope to get him out. And this is like, it's a weird thing because you've got 5 survivors in the aircraft and one of their friends is here and he's not responding. I remember us dumping him out of the basket and laying him on the floor, and all he had was a shirt on. He had no other clothes on, minus a shirt. And I remember cutting up the middle of it and checking a pulse. There was no pulse. I started doing CPR, and Mike, thank God Mike was there. Because our cabin was full, we had 5 other survivors in the aircraft. And we're doing CPR. Well, it's 45 minutes to get back to St. Paul Island. And I'm cranking on this guy's chest. I'm doing CPR, trying to get a pulse back. I set Mike up with the BVM. That's a bag valve mask, for those that don't know.
I didn't know, so thank you.
Yeah, and he was doing rescue breathing for the victim, and we're doing our compressions to breathing rate, and I'm checking about every so many sets, so many minutes as best as I can. And I remember feeling a pulse. I'm like, all right, I got a pulse back. This is great. This is great. Mike, keep breathing for him. Just keep going. And I'd check a little bit later, and the pulse would fade away. And I remember cranking on this guy for a while, and I remember also in the position I was in, looking to my right, and I had, all of his friends and his crew members there. And I remember them looking at me like, that's our buddy. And they knew I was going to do everything I could to help. And for a long time, I didn't think I did enough. But I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have a pulse. I had a whole bunch of survivors. I was exhausted. I remember sweat dripping out of my helmet and coming down to my eyes. My eyes were burning from salt water. Burning bad, too. I remember that. I remember Kendall and Melissa just kind of, Jason, you're doing a great job. I remember trying to yell at the guy, like, come on, man, get that pulse back. Come on, you can do it. So we, Mike and I did CPR for 45 minutes from location. We were starting to get out of fuel, so we had to leave, and all the Good Samaritan vessels said, hey, we've got everybody out of the water, or we think we have everybody out of the water. They were doing all their counts. So we get back. We're on our way to St. Paul. We land in St. Paul. I'm cranking on the chest of this guy, and I remember the cabin door opening, and I remember seeing this guy. I don't know who he was. I don't know if he was a local ambulance guy. I don't know if I couldn't even tell you right now. But I remember seeing him and sitting back like, holy shit, I have help. And then he jumped on the chest and started compressions because I was just freaking smoked. And then the gurney came over and they pulled him off and they got him on the gurney. And I remember, helping everybody kind of get off the aircraft. And I remember saying, hey, this is, he's got burns over here, and learning later that was Captain Shoemaker. But that was, we got back and at that point we had been flying for almost another 3.5 to 4 hours. So it was 2 hours to get on scene, give or take an hour to an hour and a half that we were on scene, picking up the victims, and then another 45 minutes to get to St. Paul. When we landed, we were done. So in the Coast Guard, once you hit 6 hours or more of flight time, you can't fly for X amount of hours. And off the top of my head, it was 12. So we were grounded immediately. I remember Will being right there, being like, Quinny, what do you need? And I told him, I was like, we need a couple things for the EMT bag because I pulled some stuff out of there. We're going to need to refill it. And I couldn't tell you if we did or not right there because I know we had limited resources. And the only reason I remember Will being there is because a C-130, another H-60 from Kodiak Island, was on their way to help us. The C-130 was on scene doing orbits around the top. They were dropping rafts to people that they thought they saw in the water. And then there's another H-60 coming out of, like, the pararescue guys were coming out of Anchorage. Like, there was a lot of resources coming to this scene. And I remember looking at Will like, holy shit. Like, what the hell was that? And he just looked at me and was like, good job, dude. And then he took the aircraft and they went back out because there were other people out there. There were people in them that were missing. There were people in the water. You know, the Samaritan vessels, they're out searching, but the case wasn't over. So but I couldn't do anything. Like our crew at that point was done, and the other crew got on the helicopter, boom, and they start taking off. And I remember at that point, the adrenaline was just freaking like through the roof for me. At one point, I had gotten a little hole in my dry suit, and I'm dumping water out of one of the legs of my dry suit. Had no idea. I was like, oh. Immediately after that case, they loaded our entire crew on the C-130 and flew us back to Kodiak for a full debrief, SISM training, everything after that. But it was nothing really hit me until way later. So
now I've watched what TV show were you on? Like the
History Channel.
The Dangerous Jobs of Alaska. Was that what the episode was?
Yep.
And you made a comment about hypothermia.
Yeah.
You haven't really, I mean.
So it's kind of funny. Like, I love TV. I don't remember.
Do you like TV as much as you like cruise ships?
Yeah. I do. No, actually, what's funny is I don't actually remember being hypothermic on that case at all. But I remember, like, for that part of that episode, like, we were having a full discussion, and I had been hypothermic many times being in the water. Mm-hmm. You come out shivering and whatnot. But yeah, I don't remember
Not
being.
for that case.
I don't remember being cold.
Not even with the hole in your dry suit.
No, I just remember being wet and be like, that's weird. And actually, it wasn't even until like a week later when I put it back on and jumped in the water, I was like, oh shit, I got a hole in my suit. No wonder I was wet. Oh, so. Ooh, yeah, that was the fishing vessel Galaxy Rescue from my end. It was pretty gnarly.
And before we move on to that case and the rest of your career and whatnot, you have had the opportunity more recently to talk to Captain Shoemaker for the first time in nearly 20 years.
Yeah, we did. We actually connected, and if everything works out, he'll be on this podcast. And he'll tell his side of the story of us coming in. But what was kind of interesting is, Olaf Lavelle and George Cavallo, they talk about it, their ghosts and stuff like that. And it's funny, like I didn't actually know I had any major issues from this until like little things would come up, like the video on the History Channel. Mm-hmm. No problem, I can watch that without any issue at all. It's kind of funny, and I laugh at it every time I see it. Yeah, because I remember being so cold. Take a nice warm shower, do it again tomorrow. But I remember about a week and a half to 2 weeks after that case was over, standing in the shower at home and just breaking into tears. And I remember, like, what is wrong with me? And it wasn't until the high came off, and it just for like 15 minutes I'm just crying in the shower uncontrollably. I can't stop, and I remember thinking to myself, like, what is wrong with you? Like, this is not. What are you crying for? Like, there's no reason for this. And I talking
and
myself.
Not that 2002 was that long ago when you think about it, but I feel like it was long enough ago that PTSD was not something that people talked about yet. I mean, they did, but not to the extent that they do today.
Agreed. Yeah.
So back then you're saying what's wrong with me, whereas now they would say this is normal.
Right. Oh yeah, very much so. Well, the other part about it, like, and mad props to, Olaf and George. Like, they did ask me quite often. A lot of the guys in the shop would say, "Hey man, how are you doing? You doing all right?" And I would talk about the case. They asked about it. We talked about it. And like, "Hey, you doing okay? You doing good?" Like, for me, it was just nonchalant shop talk. "Oh, you good?" "Oh, yeah, I'm good." I never told anybody I was crying in the shower. Like, it wasn't, but that's not our mentality. That wasn't, like, our mentality is tough guys. We don't cry. We don't freaking cry. No, you don't talk about that. And now I totally agree. It's frowned upon nowadays. Nowadays, I would tell everybody, talk about it, cry about it, let people know. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with SISM and that PTSD stuff. So, but.
Well, and you were sent a YouTube video recently as well. I say recently, but a
little while, yeah.
Yes.
A couple months ago.
6 months ago.
Yeah.
And even though you've seen the History Channel
video, that was a new video. I hadn't seen that one.
And that kind of got you a little bit.
It did get me. Yeah. I remember having to stop like partway through, like, ooh, I can't watch that. Like, it's still really raw. Again, 20 years ago. That's yeah. And then here, you know what? I'm telling everybody out there about this because I don't want them to go through the same thing I do. I mean, one, talk to somebody, and two, if you ever have that situation that I was in, take it one step. It was controlled chaos. The whole thing was extremely chaotic, but yet we had maintained such a control level on our end. Control what you can control.
Exactly.
Get what do what you can do, and make the rescue. So,
would you change anything about that day?
Ooh, good question.
That you could control, obviously. Because in the episode that we recorded on your first case, you talked about like where you situated yourself in a corner, which was the worst place.
That was stupid.
I wouldn't call you that. Maybe inexperienced.
Okay, that was inexperienced. That was an inexperienced move.
What about this case?
I don't think there's anything that could have been changed. Thinking back on everything, like we did everything right that we could have done. It went from Kendall flying in the left seat to Melissa flying in the right seat to Mike having to do stuff, with his stuff. Obviously I wish I could have done more for the guy that we were doing CPR on. He ended up passing away of like a body core temperature of like 80 degrees. He was cold. Like they couldn't rewarm him. And they, from what I understand and what I was debriefed, is they ended up doing CPR on that guy for like almost 12 hours. Wow. Like they kept him alive for a long time. And then they finally said he's not coming back. So, yeah, I don't know if there would have been anything else that I would do different for that case. I mean, it was, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think our crew did an amazing job, and I truly believe that any crew that could have gone out would have done the exact same amazing job. I really do believe that. It just so happened we were on duty, and they said, "Hey, take the off-going crew." So,
well, thank you for sharing your story with me and everybody who will listen to this. I think you're amazing.
You're biased.
I would, probably. But if I was that guy in the water and you had me and you said it's going to be okay, I truly think I'd be the same way. You got me. Okay. I was praying for a miracle, and I got you. In more ways than one.
You're not allowed to say that. We're on a podcast. Well, thanks for taking my role.
As somebody who does nothing for a profession like you all do, I'm so thankful that there are people like you in this world.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, thank you.
My pleasure. I dig it. I like it. I mean, I do love this job. I love everything about this job that we do. It is so much fun.
I mean, you're coming at it with the lens, and everyone you interview comes at it with the lens of how can we help. Right. There's that other half. Think about those men and women, if there were women, on that boat, and they didn't have someone coming to help.
Yeah.
You know.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Well done.
I spent my week with 9 and 10-year-olds. You know, I go a little deep on the weekends. But no, I'm serious. So for everyone that's listening, you included, thank you. It takes a very special person to do what you guys do. 20-foot waves, Bering Sea, I'm in.
Yeah. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
The last part that we talked about heading, the direction that we would talk about heading into was just how this case set you up for the rest of your career, because you have a lot more cases that you've done that we're not going to get to today. But how did this case in particular set you up for your amazing career?
Another good question. So I think this one, when it came down, like after it was said and done, I was on such a high from it. It really, I took everything else thereafter as like, oh, well, this should be relatively easy. You know, I took it as like, hey, let's take our time, you know, take the chaos and control it and come down to, you know, just take our time. There's no hurry. We can't. I've been in complete chaos. So, you know, being hoisted down to some guy on a mountain that was having a chest pain or a shortness of breath was okay. I got you. No problem. You know, it's not a storm blowing sideways. We're on the side of a mountain and I can help you. You know, a lady that drove off a cliff and I'm going up to hiking up like, hey, what's going on? And you know, we get her out, and then people that get swept out of, you know, off the beach and swept out on shore and like, oh, there they are. Okay, get them, go. You know, and understand how to start controlling that situation and that side of things. And that just comes with experience. And whether it's the training world into the real world, or you have that real world experience that says, wow, that worked or didn't work. But I will tell you, like, all the training that I went through prior to that case solidified to me, the training was worth it. Like, that suck it up that I needed to get through training, that's why. Because at the end of that case, I didn't quit on that case. I didn't walk away from that case. I didn't say no. There are 5 people that are alive because of our crew. I mean, that whole ship, it sunk. That ship's gone. They didn't recover that ship. So whether it exploded and sank, whether it just buckled and sank, we don't know. We were tracking it for a little while, and then poof, it wasn't there. But there were 5 people that definitely survived because we did our job. The pilots flew incredibly. Mike hoisted phenomenally. I got put in the water. I did what I was trained to do. That's what set me up for everything else that I've ever done since then. And I look at everything else. And I think there's a couple cases that stand out to me where I was like, ooh, yeah. But for the most part, that case has been my biggest case that I've ever done. And it was gnarly. And ooh, yeah, buddy, come on.
Well, I'm glad you have guardian angels on your side.
Yeah, me too. So does my mom and my dad.
God is good.
Totally. Well, thanks, son.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you on as a guest. Or if you have any questions about rescue or anything else we talk about here, send an email to jason@therealresq.com. That's Jason at TheRealResQ.com. You can also check us out on our web pages, therealresq.com, our Facebook page, and our Instagram page @TheRealResQ. Again, a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember, when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.